He's got feedback really bad.
Is that might be me? Testing, testing. Is that
Why
me?
don't we all mute unless we're talking? See if that helps.
Right, if you're not talking, mute.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Thank you for the suggestion, Madam Treasurer. But we're calling this meeting to order, and Mr. Secretary, if you'd like to do the roll, or we could, obviously we have a quorum, but if you want to do the roll, you could do the roll. It's up to you.
Well, might as well just to do it, make it official.
You should do the roll.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, whenever you're ready, Mr. Secretary.
okay, Armando Balderrama,
Absent.
John Barbera,
Here.
Vic Christensen here, Maya Denola. Looks like absent for now, at least. Who's in the attendees here? Okay, nobody, none of those people. John DeMiglio. It's like absent. Craig Goldfarb. Oh, sorry, yeah, Craig Goldfarb.
Here.
Dan Dixon.
Here.
Cynthia Gagne.
Here.
Christian Guzman.
I am here.
Gwen Henry.
Here, how's my sound, by the way?
Okay.
Melanie LeBrecq.
Here.
Kelly Miller. Looks like absent. Alex Norman. You're muted, Alex.
Here. He was here. He's here.
He still is. There we go. Alex Norman.
Is he having problems unmuting?
Well, I
He's
see his
talking,
name there,
but
but I
he's
can't hear. Adrianita Reyes Cruz.
She's
Looks like she's absent. Angela Sumner
Here.
and Chris Faye.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
yep. Awesome.
Okay, excellent, Mr. Secretary. So next, if there's no objection, let's move on to the finance items. And Madam Treasurer, why don't you go ahead and introduce them? They've been discussed already at a previous meeting, but why don't you go ahead and introduce them again?
Okay, first item on the agenda is to vote on NC Bank card holder. So basically it's just to keep me as the card holder as treasurer since it's not expired and I have it right here. So without any objection, I don't know, do we have to do a motion for it? For these and a vote?
Yeah, we may as well do it. We may as well do that real quick, and we could have you as being the first, and we'll get a second
Okay.
from someone.
Second, Gwen Henry, second.
Alrighty, any discussion?
Melanie, I think the closer you can keep it to your normal procedure, probably the better.
Right, because I don't want any like red flags all of a sudden again, because this is crazy, but
Right.
anyway. That being said, okay, Gwen, so any discussion? Okay, so we'll vote. John Barbera,
Yes.
Victor. Vic,
Muted.
You're on mute, Vic.
I forgot to unmute, sorry.
yes,
Yes,
okay.
or I.
Dan Dixon,
Yes.
Craig,
Yes.
Cynthia,
Yes.
Christian,
I'm gonna abstain.
okay. Gwen,
Yes.
Melanie, yes. Kelly Miller's absent. Let's see, Angela,
Yes.
Chris Valier,
Yes.
and Ally can't vote. And Adrianita isn't here, so that's it. Okay, so moving on. The next is for second signer for John Barbera. I make a motion for him for second signer. Do I have a second?
Chris Fay, second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. John Barbera,
Yes.
Victor,
Yes.
Dan Dixon,
Yes.
Craig,
Yes.
Cynthia,
Yes.
Christian, Guzman,
I'm going to abstain.
okay. Gwen,
As discussed at the prior meeting, yes.
Melanie, yes. Angela Sumner,
Yes.
Chris Valier,
Here. Yes.
yes. Okay, that's it. And then the next one is for alternate card holder.
And second.
And that
the
was
motion.
Victor Christensen.
Gwen Henry seconds the motion, just in case.
Okay, any discussion? So call for the vote. John Barbera,
Yes.
Victor,
Yes.
Dan Dixon,
Yes.
Craig Goldfarb,
Yes.
Cynthia,
Yes.
Christian Guzman,
I'll abstain.
okay. Gwen,
Yes.
Melanie, yes. Angela
Yes.
and Christian Valle.
Yes.
Okay, and that's it. Now, the one last thing we have to do is, and I can bring it up. Am I able to screen share? Chris?
You should be as host, Madam Treasurer. I made you the co-host.
Okay.
And are we going to move on to the budget?
What we're gonna do is the budget. So I'm gonna screen share that.
Okay, thank you.
I think I am anyway. There we go. What in the world did I get here? What is going on? Why is this doing this? That's not what I want to screen share. What are you guys seeing?
Page 8.
Okay. all right.
Annual budget for fiscal year.
Okay, there we go. So this is the annual budget for the fiscal year. So it breaks it down into, for those that are new, it breaks it down into office operational. So we have a budget for the minute taker to pay once we get one. And then we pay Christina, this is what we pay her yearly. And then audio services, once we go back to in person, this is our audio service amount. And because of that, we have to figure it into the budget because we just don't know when we're going to be meeting again. And it's easier to have it earmarked than to grab it somewhere else and have spent the money already. The administrative funds, these are set up for if we go back virtual, we always have food, as well as we'll have postage and things like that, that will essentials, printing materials that for board type meetings that we'll need administrative funds for once we're not virtual anymore. So those are earmarked. This stuff doesn't have to be reapproved or anything. This budget, automatically we can move the money here or there within this without doing revotes. Then we go down. This is outreach money. We do normally 3 newsletters a year. Those cost us $4,450. Until we decide what we're going to do going forward, if we're still doing them or what we're doing, we've earmarked for 2 of them, which is $44.50 and $44.50 for them. Outreach funds, these are uncategorized, of basically unallocated funds, it's $5,300. Then We've allocated $5,000 for neighborhood purpose grants. So that brings our total to 3,200. Now, we'll have to redo this budget in August, September, whenever we get our rollover money. And that we're getting like 7420, I think, something like that, that will be added into this, and we have to reallocate that money. But for right now, we're getting 32,000 to start off with. So right now, I'm going to make a motion to accept this budget, this preliminary budget, and this
Madam
budget can
Treasurer?
be
Madam
changed
Treasurer?
all the time.
Madam
We can
Treasurer?
change it every month. We can change it on an ongoing basis. This is to get our money deposited into our account and have use of it. So
Madam
right now
Treasurer,
I'm making a motion and I need a second.
can we have a discussion first?
We will have a discussion,
Okay.
but
Yeah, point
We
of
have to
order,
have
just
a
point of
second.
order. Let's have a second so then we can have discussion on the item.
Thank you. I will second that. Gwendolyn Henry.
this was already approved by the board already. It had gone through the board. It's just, we have to have the new board reaffirm it. So any discussion? So Gwen?
Once again, those are the earmarked necessary expenses, correct?
These are the earmarked up here necessary expenses up top. Everything else is, we can change as we go.
Thank you.
So any other questions? So that being said, I'll call for the vote on this. John,
Yes.
Victor,
Yes.
Dan Dixon,
Yes.
Craig,
Yes.
Cynthia,
Yes.
Christian.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay,
Melanie, before you go on, do we need to make sure everybody has gone through the training to be approved to vote on this?
actually, yeah, on this portion of it, sorry about that. Who has done their treasurer training? Or not treasurer, but the
Funding.
financial, the little 20-minute training? Have you done it?
Don't you
Angela?
think it'd be better to
Yeah.
ask if anybody hasn't taken it?
Yeah, who hasn't done their training online? Of the new members? So you've done it, Angela?
Yep.
Okay, you did it. So I think we're good. Have you done it? You haven't done it though, Vic, right?
I have done it, but is everybody renewed if they need to?
Yes, yes, everybody was all up to date
Okay,
of the original board.
Right.
So
And
all we
we're-
have to worry about is like you and Angela, whether or not you've done the little 20-minute type training. You don't have to worry about the officer training.
no, I understand, but on the website where it shows who the ethics, funding, and code of conduct, not
Right.
everybody, I don't think, has gotten through that.
Really? Because I thought all the training was up to date, according to Lori at the last meeting.
It is, from what I saw too. Some people, there are like 3 that have a code of conduct, but it's next month.
It is now. There were some that just got updated recently.
So they're all updated now?
Yeah, it looks like they're all updated now, except for
Okay.
Maya, who's not here.
Okay. So we're good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, cool. Alrighty. Awesome.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you,
Very
Vic,
good.
for being
Good work.
conscious of that. So Gwen? Vote, yes, no?
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Melanie, yes. And then Angela
Yes.
and Chris Fallier.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Alrighty. So we're good. And that's all. We're done. Thank you, you guys. Sorry we had to go through this again, but it is
Well,
what it
thank
is.
you, Madam Treasurer.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. What is it?
Although you asked for public comment earlier, I believe we have some attendees that have recently popped in and they may have some public comment. I don't know if you would like to
Actually, I would, and that's what I was going to ask next. If there is anyone from the public who would like to make comment on non-agenda items that's relevant to the city of Los Angeles or the government, you may do so now, and we will check for who has hands raised. I see one from the planning chairwoman, Diana Nave.
Good evening. Thank you. Yeah, I just had a quick announcement to make. We recently received notice that Target has requested a lot adjustment. And the reason they've done this is that they want to put in a restaurant, a sit-down restaurant and a drive-through restaurant in the front of their property. And I've already told the council office that this is going to be controversial and that we may have some real concerns about it. They are going to come to our planning committee meeting the fourth Wednesday in September. So I just wanted to alert everyone, because you may want to put that on your calendar and plan to attend. In the meantime, I think we'll probably try to get a notice out to some of the neighbors in that area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Diana.
Diana, I can help you on that. I'll post it
Yeah.
all over the place
No, I'm sure.
on the neighborhood watch and all.
Yeah, good.
Okay, anyone else from the public? We have a few other members, 5 other attendees. If you'd like to speak, raise your hand now and we will listen. Okay, in that case, would any board members like to make a comment? It's not strictly on the agenda since this is public comment time, but we could take some board member comment if anyone has some updates in the neighborhood. Yes, go ahead, Gwen.
Just a reminder, we still have 2 Vista del Oro, that's the coined description of the area for the seats. And that the application deadline is August 2nd. I will be sending flyers or trying to cover flyers around the area, but if anybody else would like to participate in distributing flyers through the mapped area, it would be greatly appreciated. Just coordinate with me for maybe taking a stroll on a pleasant day and delivering them to different doors. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwen.
Do we have a map or detailed description on exactly what area that is?
Yes, we do. In fact, the flyer that I've created has a very good detailed border area. Perhaps what I will do is distribute it to all of our board members. I believe it is also now posted on our website.
If you have a PDF, maybe you could distribute as well. It means that if somebody wanted to run a couple of copies off at home, they
Yes,
wouldn't necessarily have to have.
I do have a PDF, yes. Is there already an email list for all of our members and contact list for all of our members? Is everybody on the group email for our board?
Yeah, I think that is available through the department and on our website. And also there's a chain email that I sent to the entire board. So you could look for that, or you can ask me or Mr. Secretary or Mr. Vice President, and we will get you connected with Gwen, or you can talk about outreach. I would try to not do it with more than 2 board members at a time, just to be on the safe side, but go ahead and do some outreach on your own. And then let us move on to the next items now. I see Vic and Melanie. Okay, so Vic, we'll go to Mr. Secretary and then we'll go to Madam Treasurer. So we're just doing announcements or public comment, and then we'll move on to the rest of the agenda.
Right. Another option for finding email addresses is the same page that I was talking about that has the status of the training, because there are email addresses listed on that page too.
Thank you, sir.
Melanie, did you have something to add?
Yes, what Gwen was saying about the candidate thing, one thing I recommend is, and if she isn't able to, I can, is post it in the Vista del Oro New Form Neighborhood Watch. They have probably about 300 people in there right now, and it'd be a good place to be, have it.
Melanie, just so you know that the neighborhood watch area is not actually the tract area that is right now being coined as Vista del
Right,
Oro.
but it is part of it. It is part of it. I've looked at it. Some of
Really?
the area, yes. Yep.
Interesting. Interesting,
Yep.
because the
It's
borders
brand
of
new,
Vista
two
del.
people that took it over online, a
Interesting.
new group that was formed. Yep.
Is
Gwen?
this
I just thought, do you have a version, scalable or adjustable version that I could turn into a Facebook and or Instagram post?
There is a very high quality version that's a PDF of the entire area. I do have a tight area. I will give you everything that.
If you could just email that to me, I can mess with it, and I'll put those out tonight, because I think that'll be at least one way to cover a lot of area without much.
I will. I did some graphic
Okay.
changes to it to make it
Let's
much more
come to
clear.
order now. We're kind of going into detail on that, and it's not an agenda item, but we had the announcement that the
Thank you.
seats are open, and go out. If you know any friends in that area, encourage them to run for the neighborhood council. So,
I see one more hand from an attendee, Lori Jacobs.
okay, we took public comment already, but if there's no objection, we can take one from Laurie now. Go ahead, Laurie.
Thank you. I am still the outreach chair. I saw comments in there until you have any discussions about reappointment. And we have worked to have the Vista del Oro seats. It's on the website. It's been on the e-blast messages. If anybody wants my help on continuing to outreach on that, just let me know. But I just wanted to answer the Q&A there, that I am still the outreach chair and will do everything I can to promote anything that committees need to have promoted.
Okay, well, thank you, Madam Outreach Chair.
Oh, and one other thing is we always provided a complete roster to all board members. We didn't have them have to go to the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. We provided that. So everybody had everybody's phone number and email address. So it'd be nice to see if somebody maybe on the exec board wanted to do that. So
I can put that together or work with Vic on it. Vic, you've got Excel, right?
you have to have a roster in the format that Department of Neighborhood Empowerment has. So anytime you have a change to the roster, they have a particular format that you send to them. And if you want to call me, Melanie, I'll be glad to help you with that.
Vic, I can send you the original one that we had, the format, and you could update it.
Yeah, just send the
Okay.
original and I can take care of
Okay.
it.
All right, well, thank you, Madam Treasurer and Mr. Secretary and Madam Outreach Chair for requesting that we provide that roster. So we will do that. And we'll move on now to the next item up for discussion, which is an introduction to rules of order. And the reason I put that on here is because although there are many of you who are very familiar with the neighborhood council system and rules of order in general, and you might have used it and you might enjoy it or not, some people don't, I thought it'd be good just to take a moment to talk about it and then ask if there are any questions and answers and how it relates to the neighborhood council system and why we use it, in my opinion. And then if there isn't much discussion on that, we will adjourn and enjoy our evening. So essentially, we use Robert's Rules of Order to have an orderly democracy that we hope is also an educated democracy, because an educated democracy is usually the best form of democracy. And part of becoming educated is learning the rules of order. And it allows us to ensure that the majority will rule while protecting the minority's ability to dissent if there is a minority. And it also allows you to it gives you a little bit more confidence on what you can do if you have an idea that maybe someone else isn't thinking of. And so you can use rules of order to introduce a motion or introduce an amendment. And so I'll just very briefly go through the skeleton, which we've used already. So essentially, someone's chairing a meeting. In this case, it's me, and in the committees, it's other people. And they're sort of like a referee of sorts, just to make sure that the meeting is going without everyone talking over one another. And people introduce motions, like the motion to approve the budget. And usually there's a second who is saying, this is worth discussing. So if no one thinks it's worth discussing, some item might not get a second, and then it wouldn't be discussed. So after there's a motion and there's a second, then it's up for discussion. And that is the time for us all to discuss it, whether we're for it, whether we're against it, whether we have an amendment to make. And then you have the ability to make an amendment. And if you want to make an amendment to a motion, like if you thought there was too little money allocated to the minutes, you could say, I move to amend that we add $500. And if someone liked that idea, they would second it. You would then vote on an amendment. And then after the amendment is either voted for or against, you go back to that original motion. At the end, when all the amendments are spoken for, you take a vote again. And in the old days, you could stand or you could say aye or no. And the loud ayes would usually have it. You could watch the House of Commons in the United Kingdom for some entertainment and some historical context, or you could also watch the House of Representatives. They use a little bit of a different system. But you can also do a roll call. And I think during the Zoom era, we're encouraged to do roll calls just so we have a more definitive record on how people are voting. It's a little bit cumbersome, I think, but it is worth it for the public as well. So as the chairperson, I am trying to serve you, and I'm not, to the best of my ability, trying to influence the motions, whether I'm for them or against them. And in many cases, I'll abstain because that is me signifying to you that it's really up to you. And if there's a tie, I may choose to vote or not. Some chair people choose to vote, and that's okay too. It's just kind of it's a philosophical choice that we make. And in my case, as I said before, I'm serving you and trying to empower you all. So I usually will try to abstain. So that just about covers 3, and I sort of went into 5. Does anyone have any questions on the rules of order? And then I got a request to also talk about how it relates to the Brown Act or to the bylaws. So if there are no questions, I'll talk about that. But let's see if there are any questions.
Christian, Kelly Miller is in the attendee.
Okay, let's let her in. And then do you also have a question?
No.
Okay, well, very good. So usually, actually, I'll just use that as an example. Typically, you want to, before you start talking extensively, ask for recognition from the chairperson. Otherwise, it can devolve into us talking over one another. And at the beginning, it takes a little bit of familiarity. So no one is going to chastise you terribly for talking a little bit too much at the beginning without being recognized. But as we get more efficient and familiar with it, we'll understand that recognition is a little bit of a sign of respect to all your other peers who might be seeking recognition. Okay, Council Member Dan Dixon.
Thank you. Our good friend Craig Goldfarb taught us a long time ago that no real action can be taken on an item until it's both introduced or a motion is made on the floor, followed by a second. And then the discussion can ensue. I think we saw a little earlier tonight, there was a little bit of an overlap. The second hadn't been quite made when people started talking about something. It's a simple matter, but it's important to keeping the chain of order intact. And I've never forgotten Craig pointing that out vividly many years ago, and he's absolutely right. So once a motion is made and it's seconded, then you can talk about it.
Thank you for reiterating that, Councilman Dixon. And we have Gwen
Sorry
Henry.
if that was a total reiteration.
No, that was excellent. It's good to repeat in order to remember something. Repetition is key, especially with music, I think. Go ahead, Gwen Henry.
Well, I consider this a fairly important topic, and this is more of a comment than a question. Other than I hope that we will possibly have a retreat where all of us can really discuss some of these things in detail, especially the newer members, and perhaps go through a few rehearsals. And also, I forgot what the other thing is. It's important, but I concede to Craig Goldfarb. So he can take that over. I may have another comment. It was another topic with that.
Okay, Councilman Craig, go ahead.
Hi,
Go ahead,
sorry,
Craig.
I had to lower the mic. No, the only thing that continuously bothers me is a lot of people, instead of saying I move, like Melanie, I don't want to be this as criticism, but you should have moved the budget, then got your second before you discussed it. And that's, a lot of people want to argue their motion first. You have to read the motion. And I find it, people will say, oh, I'm explaining the motion. No, that there's a motion. There's people that may be listening that can't see the motion or can't get access to it at that time or can't read. So usually you read the full motion. And then you go into, if you wanted to discuss it, then you would discuss it. But a lot of times I find that people are discussing the motion, and sometimes they're arguing their motion, not discussing the motion.
That's a good point. And something that I would add is when we're doing discussion, oftentimes, even though we might be friends and we might be familiar with one another, if you want to talk about the maker of the motion or address someone's title, it's sort of a sign of respect, and it keeps it a little bit more impartial, because usually we don't want things to become personal in nature in any way, even if it could be good. We want to show some impartiality to the public at the very least, and that we all mutually respect one another. So oftentimes, if you're being very, I would say, by the book, you would say the maker of the motion or the distinguished gentleman or gentlewoman or the treasurer. But in these times, so since oftentimes we're more familiar, we may use our first names every now and then. But again, impartiality for the public's sake is kind of the goal, because the discussion and the merit of the motion is the key there. And then just as sort of an example of how discussion works, I see Dan's hand raised again. But according to the standing rules and according to usually the way you discuss things is you'd see if anyone else wants to discuss it. There really wouldn't be a for or against in this case, but I don't see any other hands. So if there are no other hands, I'll call Councilman Dan again, and then we'll see if anyone else has any other questions. So Council Member Dan Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's really a question, perhaps for Council Member Goldfarb. You talked about, and correctly so, reading the motion so that people can understand it, hear it, et cetera, for the reasons you cited. I'm wondering, sometimes motions are lengthy and include a lot of whereases which provide historical context, but may not be related to the actual substance of the motion. Does that entire section of a motion need to be read, or will the therefores suffice?
So I'll just use this actually as another teaching moment. And again, this is kind of more informal, but typically the questions would be brought to the chair first and not directly to another council member. But in this case, since we're all learning, and I consider myself a lifelong learner, Craig, do you have anything to add? And if not, I have a response. Okay, so Craig's not, his screen is off and he's muted. So I'll just say that typically if it's a really lengthy motion, you can give it to the secretary and they could show it on the screen, or you could only read the resolved portion if it's a huge resolution with a lot of whereases.
No.
And if you're doing it very formally, usually the chair would read it or the secretary would read it before the discussion starts, and then we'd read it again before the discussion ends. But in the case of a long one, we would just want to make sure that everyone understands the implications of the action and then maybe screen share it. Or if I hope we meet again in person, we would have the screen up again. So in short, you don't always have to read the whole thing, but if you have the patience to it's definitely a good idea. And Councilwoman Gwen Henry.
Thank you. This was the second thought. As it is, this is an important topic, and we do have some board members missing. I hope we do once again have a retreat. Also, I urge all board members and all attendees to join committees, because we don't want to do a lot of motions for changing things once they've gotten to the board meeting. Most of the adjustments to motions are done within committee, and we really don't want to wrap up much of our board time fixing and changing. If you really have interest and commitment in an item, please join the committees and work on it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwen. And I would actually add, committees are an excellent format and forum to practice rules of order, and it's a little less formal often, and you're just with 2 or 3 people. So join a committee, see how it's done. And it's also the time to, as she said, discuss the substance of things that'll come back to the board. And Pat was saying in the chat that the motion can be very simple, and he gave an example, and he's correct. Motions usually want a simpler motion. The simpler, the better, and it can often relate to a report from a committee. So thank you, Pat, for bringing that up.
Do you trust him?
And then I see Mr. Secretary, please.
To follow on from what Gwen was saying, by the time a letter or document or something gets to the board to be put before the board and approved, or at least voted on to be approved, it needs to be in a pretty much final state. So there's not any little, nitpicky type things or additions. All the text needs to be as final as it can be. If there's any proofreading to be done, that should be done ahead of time. If there are any CCs of people who, the addressees who it needs to go to, that all needs to be done ahead of time. So we're not wasting time during a board meeting doing amendments to change those things and stuff like that.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. That was an excellent addition. So, not seeing any other hands, but I do see Doug Epperhart in the waiting or in the attendee arena. And Doug, we're talking about rules of order. Any quick tips you have to give us? Totally optional, you don't have to, but you're oftentimes willing to talk to anyone who wants to talk to you. So if you'd like to, I'll give you an opportunity.
Well, okay, since you're picking Yeah, I think you said most everything. There are some rules that I've promulgated over the year, but with regard to meetings, it's the rule of one. You discuss one thing at a time, one motion at a time, and one person at a time talks. You don't talk over each other, you don't interrupt each other. The other thing about motions, the shorter, the better. I, in my time, have been known for writing motions that say resolved, blah, 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 in a single sentence. I don't even bother with whereases. And you may have said this already, though. When you're having debate, you debate the resolved part first. I've seen boards have ridiculously lengthy discussions about the whereases and never have any problem with the resolved part. The resolved part is your motion, not the whereases. So, I always tell people the more you put in the motion, the more you have to argue about. So less is more.
Thanks, Doug, and it's been a pleasure working with you so far, and definitely would love to continue. I see Diana Nave had her hand up. I think she put it down. Diana, did you want to talk? Let me see. She's our planning committee chair. See if she has anything to add. She did add a comment that the board members should read the motions before the board meeting. That's a good idea. Doing homework, as I said earlier, being an educated democracy is usually the best form of democracy. So the more research you do ahead of time is the better.
Yeah, but actually what I wanted to do is just to give a little context for the Roberts rules. And it's the reason for doing this is because it actually came up at a Hank meeting one time that people didn't understand the relationships of all these different things that kind of govern neighborhood councils. And so the context for it is this kind of a hierarchy. And within that hierarchy, if there's a conflict, the thing that is higher takes precedence. So the highest thing in the hierarchy really is the Brown Act. Everything we do is subject to the Brown Act. And then there's the city charter, which lays out the purposes and functions for the neighborhood councils very briefly. But then that's implemented through an ordinance that's referred to as the plan or the neighborhood council plan. And that then has certain things that lays out for neighborhood councils, including what the role of Dunn and Balk are. And there's some question as to whether or not they're overstepping their guidelines. You have to go back to that ordinance to see what they're authorized to do. And then after that, you get our bylaws, which are specific to Northwest, but have to have been approved by the city attorney. And then come our standing rules. And the standing rules always have to be consistent with the bylaws. They can't ever override something in the bylaws, but they can be more specific and add more information that's in there. And then Robert's rules, of course, just provide the grease to help the meetings run more efficiently. So that was all. That's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Diana. And if anyone's interested in seeing Diana in action, check out the planning committee. And I would also use this as a very brief time to say, I've been in communication with many of you, trying to find out what committees you're interested in, and many of you responded. If you know anyone who maybe has not responded, let me know outside of the meeting, and we can make sure that I hear back from everyone on what committees our board members want to be on. Okay, I see Gwen's hand up one more time. We had her discuss twice already, and so I'll say again, usually twice is kind of the maximum. It's in our standing rules. We want to keep things semi-efficient for the public's sake and our own, since we have our personal lives. But since there are no other hands, and I think that we're kind of wrapping this up, and it's been a very good discussion, an opening discussion, and we will continue at a retreat. That would be a good idea, and I'd be open to that. Gwen, why don't you go ahead?
This was actually in regards to your last comment about committees and involvement. There are also liaison positions. Those are extremely important, and there's a good laundry list, some of which we never filled last season, and they're very good opportunities. Thank you.
Yeah, she is absolutely correct.
Exactly.
So I think we had a pretty good introductory discussion on this. Once again, Diana put it into some context in terms of that we do have laws that we want to abide by, and there is a hierarchy. But the central point of the rules of order is to maintain respect and maintain some order, make sure that we're not talking over one another, protect a minority if there is one, and ensure freedom of speech. And that about does it. So if there are no other hands, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, and then we will see each other at the next board meeting or at the committees.
So moved.
I'll second
Okay,
it.
there was a motion to adjourn by Dan Dixon.
I'll second it.
Cynthia seconded the motion. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Who seconded?
Cynthia seconded the motion. Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned. So I'll see you at the next board meeting or maybe at the committees. Let me know if you have any questions on committees, and have a beautiful night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
You do the same. Bye, everybody.
Night, everyone.
Bye.